First of all, let's not normalize that painful boobs are normal. Okay. So that's the first thing that we want to establish. And a lot of times something is so common, and it's like every woman you talk to and they say, oh yeah, I have my boobs get really painful. And we assume that it's normal. Just because something is common, just because you have constant engorgement and pain, does not make it normal.
Welcome. This is episode 417. I'm so glad to see you here. Today, we're going to be talking about fibrocystic breasts and breast health overall. Now, did you know that between 50 to 90% of women experience fibrocystic breasts at some point during their lifetime, according to Cleveland Clinic, Mount Sinai, and PubMed? The condition is most common amongst women ages 20 to 50 years old. Now, I don't need to tell you that when we're dealing with breast health, there's a lot of fear, shame, guilt, when we're dealing with cysts and lumps and bumps, and this conversation can feel a little bit terrifying. So don't worry, Magdalena, our guest, and I are going to walk through things step by step and really go through the details around fibrocystic breasts, what happens, how we can prevent this, and talk a little bit about hormonal imbalances, mainly estrogen dominance, inflammation, lymphatic stagnation, and really how to assess these and improve your breast health overall. Now, our guest today, Magdalena Wszelaki, is the founder of Hormones Balance Community and Welina products, supplements made by women for women. Her online platform and products are dedicated to helping women to balance hormones naturally. She's a published author of Cooking for Hormone Balance and Overcoming Estrogen Dominance. If you guys remember episode 302 from March 14th, 2021, called Overcoming Estrogen Dominance, is a really good one where we had Magdalena on to talk about estrogen dominance in more detail. So if today's just snippets on estrogen dominance interest you, then go back over to episode 302 that was published March 14th, 2021, if you want to check that out. So Magdalena wrote that book, Overcoming Estrogen Dominance, and is an endocrine nutrition expert, certified herbalist, speaker, educator, and a published author with a long history of her own hormone challenges. These challenges include Graves' and Hashimoto's disease, which is the autoimmunity conditions affecting the thyroid, and estrogen dominance. Today, she's in full remission while sailing through perimenopause, and she teaches women how to accomplish the same. So without further ado, let's cut to today's interview. Hey, my name is Leanne Vogel. I'm fascinated with helping women navigate how to eat, move, and care for their bodies using a low-carb diet. I'm a small-town holistic nutritionist turned 3-time international best-selling author turned functional medicine practitioner, offering telemedicine services around the globe to women looking to better their health and stop second-guessing themselves. I'm here to teach you how to wade through the wellness noise to get to the good stuff that'll help you achieve your goals. We're supporting your low-carb life beyond the if it fits your macros conversation. Hormones, emotions, relationship to your body, workouts, letdowns, motivation, blood work, detoxing, metabolism. I'm providing the tools to put your motivation into action. Think of it like quality time with your bestie mixed with a little med school so you're empowered at your next doctor visit. Get ready to be challenged and encouraged while you learn about your body and how to care for it better. This is the Keto Diet Podcast. Hey, Magdalena, how are you?
Really well this morning. Thank you for your patience in getting us set up this morning.
Yeah, we sure did have some technical difficulties, but we are here and we are ready to talk about breast health. I'm really stoked. We're really going to be focusing on fibrocystic breasts and what that means, why we're experiencing it, how to move past it, how to prevent it, how to know we're experiencing it, and everything in between. So why don't we start off by talking a little bit about how hormones affect our breast health?
Yeah, in a huge way, right? I mean, first of all, I think most women realize that when you are, if you're still menstruating, it's like that week, for some women, 10 days before your period, this is when your boobs can go from size A to size C in a course of days, right? So a lot of women have that inkling of, it's like, wait a second, that's something to do with my hormones because it's connected with my cycle. So definitely that's one big item. The other thing, so estrogen specifically, the play of estrogen, excessive estrogen or estrogen progesterone ratio, what we call estrogen dominance, can definitely play a huge role here. The other thing that can impact women's, breast health is just our blood sugar levels and the inflammation that it can be contributing. So it's in the body. And so some women have fibrocystic breasts as much as what we call non-cyclical breast health issues, which is basically regardless of their periods, that, they will have engorged, painful, swollen breasts for 30 days out of a month, right? So then it's not hormonal. Then it will be, you're looking more at a great level of inflammation and stagnation in the breasts that we can talk about later that play a huge role here too.
Amazing. And how then would diet play in? You talked a little bit about blood sugar. Can we get a little bit more into that as to how diet can play with just overall breast health?
Yeah, absolutely. So, breast health is never isolated, right? It's as in if somebody is having breast health issues, it's most likely this person is having other hormonal issues going on, right? So whether it's she's got heavy periods, painful periods, she might be also having weight gain around her hips and her thighs, because that's very estrogen-like. It could be that she is having no ovulation. She is struggling with things like, fibroids. She might also be having thyroid issues, thyroid nodules. Those are like estrogen dominance classical symptoms. She might have a history of breast cancer, ovarian cancer in a family, thyroid cancer, right? So all of that a lot of times connected. So really one of the, it's a big question about how do you address it. I've written books about estrogen dominance and how to resolve it with diet, right? It can be a big part, a huge part of a conversation, but, to bring it down to like really the real high level and simple concepts is you really gotta, fix your digestion, right? Remove all inflammatory foods and I suspect, I think I'm preaching to the choir because most of your listeners are fans of keto. They have done the elimination diet by now. They pay a lot of, I know you've done a lot of work around gut health. And that's usually important because estrogen partly gets metabolized in the gut itself. And so that's having the correct microbiome balance, having, not eating inflammatory foods. And in my case, I think your audience is way past this, but in case somebody's starting out on this journey, taking out gluten, dairy, soy, corn, and eggs. So that could be an interesting actually data point for keto fans, is that a lot of people do a lot of eggs in the morning, right? Or just eggs in general, because they are really super easy and nutritious food. I have found that about 50% of women that I used to work with when I was in private practice would have a problem with eggs. So it might be a good idea if you're struggling with your hormones just to remove eggs for 4 to 6 weeks and then reintroduce them and see whether they are your friend or your foe. And you can go by symptoms quite easily, anything from digestive issues to suddenly skin issues to, like, for example, I get zits if I eat too many eggs. And, some people get anxiety, feel very unsettled, get digestive issues, etc. So, so that's the first part of the process. As your digestion improves, your liver improves as well. And the liver is so fundamental when it comes to metabolism of hormones. Your thyroid hormones depend on the healthy liver, but also, again, estrogen metabolism. And what I mean by metabolism is basically how when estrogen is produced and it gets into the cells, and that's its work. And then when it's used, it gets back into the blood, and the liver is the one that separates, that clean their estrogens from it separates the dirty estrogens out of the blood. So we literally poop them out, right? So, so the liver is really like, that's your sieve. Like, think of it like if you're making bone broth, right? And you're straining all the vegetables and bones and whatnot and meat. And what's left in the, in the sieve is like the gunk. That's your liver. That's really literally what your liver does. So, so we dietarily speaking, we want to do things that supports the liver. What can you do here? Well, very simple things. First of all, like just by doing the elimination diet, you're already helping your liver in a huge way, right? And the second thing is, I love to add bitter vegetables. So anything that's got, let's put it this way, liver loves bitters, right? So anything that's bitter is going to do amazingly well for the liver. So for example, if starting off with vegetables a little bit more bitter on say, on the scale, right? Meaning throw away lettuce or zucchinis. I mean, these things are like nutritionally really poor. There's nothing exciting about them. They're not going to really help your liver, but instead support your liver with foods, cruciferous vegetables, so the brassica family of vegetables, right? So it'll be things like cauliflower and broccoli sprouts are amazing, and kale and collard greens and arugula, my personal favorite. Start making salads with arugula rather than be using lettuce as an example. Not only do they have bitter qualities, but they also contain a lot of sulfur, and they also contain a substance called alveolar methane, also known as DIM. And some of the women, some women have taken DIM before and they know what it is. And that helps you to bind up estrogen too, and it's going to support the liver. So a really amazing quality vegetables. And they don't have to be raw. You can easily cook them as well. And if people a lot of times are freaked out when I say this because they go, I have a thyroid condition, I shouldn't be eating cruciferous vegetables. Let me say this. Yeah, I know people can't see it, but I know you're smiling. And I know let me put it this way. I started off 12 years ago as a health coach working with people with thyroid and Hashimoto's disease, because that was my story too, right? And I have never, ever met a person who has removed all the cruciferous vegetables and recovered from Hashimoto's and thyroid issues. Have you?
I have never seen this in the history of the last 15 years working with people one-on-one.
Yeah. I mean, I have come across people who just put they started doing smoothies with 2 bunches of kale every morning kind of a thing.
Do it.
Yeah, and they started having thyroid problems. Okay, maybe there's something to it, but yeah. So anyway, so cruciferous vegetable. The other thing is, I'm an herbalist too, right? So you don't have to be an herbalist to bring in digestive bitters into your life, but you can just do a simple thing. Go to a health food store, go to the tea section, which now you have like 40, 50 different teas to choose from, and look for those digestive teas. And typically, when you want to look for is something that contains burdock root, dandelion root, artichoke leaf, kind of a thing, fennel. I mean, those are all amazing herbs that you can just infuse it as a little tea after dinner, after a meal, and that brings those bitter qualities into your life and really helping with supporting your liver. So really simple things like that.
Yeah, you're so right. So you guys can't see, but I have this huge glass container and it has dandelion in it and artichoke, and I brewed a tea and then I added some bitter chocolate and I drink. It is so good. It is my favorite thing and it's so tasty. A little bit of protein powder too. So you can have fun with it too. And I liked your comment too about the your audience is probably past this and these are all basics, but I think sometimes it's helpful to kind of go through those basics again, because some of us are doing things and we've forgotten why we're doing them and why they're important. And so I'm sure that was an encouragement to some of the women listening. And so we've talked a little bit about engorged breast. We've talked about fibrocystic breasts. What are some of the other health challenges or issues that we may see in our overall breast health?
I mean, first of all, let's not normalize that painful boobs are normal. Okay. So that's the first thing that we want to establish. And a lot of times something is so common and it's like every woman you talk to and they say, oh yeah, I have my boobs get really painful. And we assume that it's normal. Just because something is common, just because you have constant engorgement and pain, does not make it normal. The same way, like you go and see a doctor and they go, oh, there's a lump, right, on your breast. And then you go and get whatever diagnostic tools. It's very disputable what's the right way of doing it. But let's just say you get a thermogram or you get a sonogram done, right? And it looks benign. I mean, this is definitely another symptom, but, with Western medicine, they would just tell you to wait and see and send you home, which I generally have a problem with, because if you had a lump on your hand, or somewhere on your face, you would do something about it, right? So it does not make it normal by any means. And there's, when it comes to breast health, there's really 3 underlying causes of why our breast is struggling. Number 1 is estrogen dominance, like what I mentioned. Number 2 is inflammation. Number 3 is stagnation of the lymphatic system in the breast. The breasts are hugely, has got a lot of lymphatic passages going through them, right? And they're also so close to our armpits, which is in that a lot of the nodes are in the armpits too. And so, if you want, Leanne, we can talk about breast massage, how to do a lymphatic breast massage on your own breasts. to move that stagnation out of the breast. But those are the three underlying causes. And like I said, whenever someone has breast issues, that woman has a lot of other hormonal problems going on. So the likelihood is that if you're working on resolving your breast issues and work on estrogen dominance, work on lowering just your overall systemic inflammation in the body, move your breast lymphatic system a little bit, right? And the chances are that a lot of other health issues will resolve themselves as well.
Yeah. So can we kind of hone in on exactly what we're talking about when we say fibrocystic breasts? I'm sure many of us have done some sort of self-exam, and we'll talk about kind of what that is if you've never done it before, or some sort of breast massage, which we'll talk about in a bit, for those that may not be familiar. But when we're feeling things around, what's normal and what's not normal to feel?
Yeah, okay. So what is normal would be if you're still menstruating, what would be pretty normal is that your breast, there's some slight changes in the breast before your period, right? So that's pretty normal because at that point, your hormones are all, if you look at the chart of like, especially in the luteal phase, right, of from your ovulation to your period, there's a lot of stuff that's going on with the hormones. They're going up and down, right? And so having some kind of a change in the breast is normal. And when I say that, it just means like it might feel a tiny bit tender. It might feel a little bit larger than usual, right? But what we should not be feeling is going from cup A to cup C in a course of 2-3 days to a point where touching is really painful. Having sex is off the books because it is so unpleasant. Doing sports is off the books because it's too painful too, right? And that's not normal. Finding a lump on your breast. I mean, our breast, when I explain the massage, I think one of the cool things about doing the massage that we'll talk about is that you can use this on a daily basis, or at least, 3 times a week, to really get to know your breast of what is your normal, right? And it's correct that your breasts have kind of like almost like a lumpy feel to them because there's a lot of fat tissue. So it's almost like you're basically massaging through a fat tissue, especially when you have larger breasts. But then finding a lump, which is then something that when you're massaging your breast, not looking for a lump, but when you get to know your breast and love your breast, and then you find an irregularity, then like, okay, well, this wasn't here before. Let me go and get this checked out, right? Or hopefully you never will. I mean, that was definitely a big part of my work was, finding a lump, I think for any woman is a very emotional time, right? Because it brings up a lot of emotions of, oh, wait a second, like, what is this? And then, what brought this on? Is this normal or not? And then the worst thing is, how do I get it diagnosed? Because everybody's sending me for mammograms. But I listen to these podcasts and these women are telling me that mammograms might not be the way to go, right? Is thermogram going to be okay? What about a sonogram? Right? And then you call the hospital and they make it sound like if you don't come tomorrow and get a mammogram, you're going to die, right? And so, so there's that pressure there too. And so it's a very emotional time for anyone, especially the first time you find a breast lump. So like a distinct lump on your breast, like, something that feels like a button that's there, like a P, that's just sitting there, like a seed that's in your breast, that's not normal, right? And this is when we want to start taking care of it, obviously get it diagnosed properly. But, I'm all about prevention because that was my story of like, I remember finding my first breast lump in a car in my late 20s and how it freaked me out. I'll never forget. And it's also the emotions of shame and guilt. And it's like, oh, is it all the booze that I drank? Is it the cigarettes that I smoked? Did I potty too much in college? All that kind of stuff that's coming out. So anyway, so that's not normal. And this is where we want to do stuff. But that's why a big part of my work is all about prevention so that you don't ever have to find a lump in your breast, especially if you have a history of breast issues in the family, breast cancers. I mean, what we're going to talk about is not going to prevent breast cancer itself. But then again, estrogen dominance is a big contributor, right, towards breast cancer. It's a DNA damage that happens in the cell combined with estrogen dominance, which makes things worse. And so that's something that we can definitely prevent. And, everything that you teach is all about prevention of DNA damage. Everything that I teach, I mean, lowering inflammation itself, right? That is a huge part of that's going to play into your breast health and prevention from cancers as well, if that's a concern from someone.
When I started eating a low-carb diet in 2014, I had no idea the impacts that low electrolytes would have on my overall health. I started keto. I added a little bit of pink salt to my water, but really didn't think that a lack of sodium, potassium, or magnesium would really throw me off. I can tell you after a couple of weeks of eating the ketogenic diet, it was very apparent that I needed electrolytes. Unfortunately, at the time, there was no Element electrolytes. There was no such thing. I really had two different options. They weren't the best. I went and added pink salt to my water. That tasted not so great. Fast forward a whole bunch of years, Element came out with their first electrolyte powder, and I've been hooked ever since. In fact, little secret here, I actually add more salt to my Element packet because I'm crazy. So my very favorite way to enjoy Element electrolytes is to add it to my 24-ounce water bottle and add an additional quarter teaspoon of gray sea salt. Now, this isn't for everybody, but for individuals that are massively lacking sodium, I do have this issue personally. It can display as allergies, apathy, abdominal bloating, depression, dizziness, fatigue, low blood pressure, low hydrochloric acid in your stomach, poor protein digestion, weakness, slow oxidation. And unfortunately, calcium supplements will make this even worse. And so if you think that maybe you need more sodium on your ketogenic diet, the best way to bump this up is with electrolyte packets. I've had many coaching friends and clients tell me that they're taking anywhere between 2 to 6 packets a day. I know that it is my most favorite way to prepare for a workout is doing my electrolytes about 30 minutes before I work out. If you haven't tried Element and you're looking for a different type of electrolyte, or you've never tried them before and you're curious if this is the missing ticket in your ketogenic diet, you can go to drinklmnt.com, grab a couple items, and get a free sample pack with your order. That's 8 single serving packets free with any Element order. All you have to do is go to drinklmnt.com/KDP, and you can get your free sample pack with any order. Now, this is totally risk-free. If you don't like what you get, contact them and they will give you your money back. No questions asked. You really have nothing to lose. It's a fantastic product, and I can't wait to hear which flavor is your favorite. Completely. And we're going to take a pivot into prevention, but I have one more question kind of in the realm of we're feeling around, we're feeling stuff. What are we looking for? How do we feel around? Like, what are we doing in a self-exam? How often are we doing it? When in the cycle is best? How does this change when we have experienced menopause? Like, what should we be doing with the self-exam?
Yeah, so let me explain the massage in just a second, but it's also a good point you mentioned about perimenopause and menopause. So a lot of women who enter perimenopause and menopause start experiencing breast changes as well. And sometimes it's not particularly connected to the cycle because the cycle can go really, really off kilters, and so you might, if you're going through perimenopause or menopause, you might be experiencing that suddenly you're having these breast changes, right? And which you've never had before. Is that normal? No, you shouldn't be experiencing them. It's the same story. And it was something that comes as a huge surprise, Leanne. And so let me just talk about this before we do the massage demo, is that a lot of women who are perimenopause and menopause say, oh, there's no way I have estrogen dominance. My estrogen is dropping. You're right. And that's a plausible, it's a logical assumption. I remember I had, my book, Overcoming Estrogen Dominance, was lying on one of my colleagues' table in the kitchen, and her mom was visiting. And her mom has got huge problems with her breast. She's got issues with hot flashes, and she's going through like a hell of a menopause. And so she picked up the book and she put it back down. And my colleague says to her mom, actually, this book will be great for you. And the mom says, well, not really. I'm not estrogen. I can't be the estrogen dominant. I have no estrogen. I'm in menopause, right? So I want to talk to this for just a second because so we don't lose, our audience who are going through that phase of their lives. First of all, let's establish the fact. Think of the fact itself that most women who have breast cancer, that are estrogen receptor positive breast cancer, that happens in the age of between 55 and 65. That's the highest demographic, right? Is their estrogen low, their progesterone low? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Can you be estrogen dominant even when your estrogen is low? Yes, completely. And so just because something is low, it doesn't mean that it's non-existent. So think of it this way, right? It's like I think one analogy, just to use a bit of our imagination here to bring this home, is think of it, estrogen is like a river, right? And as the river is flowing and it's hitting this bank in the middle of the river, and the bank separates the river then into a clean stream, like clean estrogens and dirty estrogens, right? Dirty estrogens is what causes a lot of the symptoms that we talked about, including changes in the breast tissue. And so when you are in perimenopause, you still have a river, you still have a bank. The bank, by the way, is the liver, because that's what separates things out. You still have your river, the water, estrogen, and the bank is just as less water, right? So now you don't have a huge, river. You just have a stream that's flowing, but it still gets separated to clean and dirty streams. And so I think that's the best analogy. And in fact, the more you take care of estrogen dominance and reverse it and address it, the higher the likelihood is that you're actually going to be sailing through perimenopause and menopause with a lot more ease, as compared, meaning with no hot flashes, with far less issues with memory loss and incontinence and, skin drooping and so on and so forth, as compared to someone who's got estrogen dominance. So I just wanted to clarify that. And that's the reason why you can still be experiencing a lot of breast changes due to estrogen dominance in perimenopause and menopause. Okay, so since we're doing audio only, I'm just going to use voice prompts on how to do the breast massage. And just to make it clear, this is not a massage to find lumps on your breast. That's a different kind of massage that you're going to learn how to do. There's so many different videos that you can use to do that. The purpose of the exercise that I'm going to explain is just to really move the lymphatic system and unstuck the lymphatic stagnation, right? Move the stagnation in the breast. That is the purpose of it. And just to really get to know your breast, because a lot of women don't touch their breasts. And so whenever they find even something like a little lumpy fatty tissue, they don't know whether, is it really a lump or is it just a fat tissue? Because they don't know whether it's been there before or hasn't. So the best thing to do this is to either use some cream, and I can talk about some herbs that you can use or oils that you can use to get like a extra effect. But, you can also do that in the shower when you are wet and you are using some nice clean soap that is, free of any phthalates and parabens and stuff like that, some nice Castile soap kind of deal. And so imagine you're a shower, you're nicely leathered up and you are all good. What you're going to do is just take your left hand, put it behind your head, right? And if you cannot move your hand that far because of some shoulder problems or whatever, then just lift it as far as you can. So now you're going to take so that was your left hand, right? That's behind your head. And you're going to take your right hand. We're going to be massaging the breast basically from the nipple going out to your clavicle. So think of the clavicle as being like the exit sign. That's what you want to move the stagnation into. And you literally think of the lymphatic system as like a highway with these little trucks that go around collecting debris from around the body. And they are like your trash trucks, right? That will evacuate trash out of your body. And so that is, and there's so much of the lymphatic activity that's happening in the breast. So the clavicle is your exit point. Let's start off with think of it like 12 o'clock, right above your nipple, right? And you want to, with your 3 middle fingers of your right palm, you want to be pressing on your breast and then moving the lymphatic system, moving the skin, right? Moving the whole thing towards the clavicle. Then let's move on to 11 o'clock and we do the same thing from the nipple, right? And then again, we're moving that towards the clavicle. Then move on to 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock, right? And then now in terms of pressure, you don't want to be, you want to be gentle on your breast, but you also don't want to be too soft, right? So the pressure is about, think of it this way, if there was honey under your skin, you want to put enough pressure to kind of move that honey along, right? But not to a point where it's just when it's painful or it gets too squeezed. And then when you come to the bottom of your breast from the nipple, so that's like the 6 o'clock kind of a deal, then you put the pressure, you basically move your hand down a little bit and then up over the breast again towards the clavicle, right? And you go around like that, finishing one breast, switch hands. Now your right hand goes behind the head and you use your left hand now to to massage the breast. And that way you're moving your lymphatic. There is, women who have had a lot of stagnation, a lot of pain, just feel so much relief really quickly. Leanne, can I talk about a couple of oils and herbs that can really amplify the effect?
Yes, please.
So there is a couple of things you can do. One of my favorites, a lot of people know that, if you have painful periods, one of the things you can do is evening primrose oil, right? And that comes in a capsule. The magical compound in there is called gamma linolenic acid, so GLA, and the GLA can actually be used topically as well. And by the way, it works on the breast pain too, but you can, in order to massage your breast and have a bit of oil and use it as a massage oil, just take the capsule, break it with a knife or scissors, and massage your breast. It's typically 1 capsule per breast. If you have really big breasts, then you might need to use more. I mean, that's just really one fantastic and quick way of using that. I will say, I mean, we have a product that we formulated last year, and it took us almost 2 years of coming up with a formula. And the cool thing was that our formulator had humongous breast issues. And so she was in her mid-30s, and she could not put on a bra when she had, the 10 days out of the month before her period. And so she was a really great test background for us, but we also obviously used it with a lot of other women. And so that oil itself is amazing. The other thing is, if you can find, so there's this amazing herb called poke root, Poke, poke root. And, it's something that historically it was used by wise women as well as midwives for mastitis and mastalgia, which is basically breast pain and inflammation in the breast. There isn't a lot of research behind it, but it's been used for centuries. And I cannot tell you, we've experimented with every one of them on one basis, just trying one thing at a time. And poke root is just phenomenal. It also can be used for fibroids, for uterine pain. So if you can find an oil that's infused with poke root, I think there are some people selling that, for example, on Etsy. You might learn how to do it yourself. I mean, you can buy poke root in a root, from mountain rose, and then infuse the oil yourself. There's a lot of videos online showing you how to do that. And then massage your breast with that oil, with that infusion. I mean, that is a total game changer. Our product, Happy Sisters, does contain poke root. That's our hero herb in the formula, in a cream, for that very reason. So those are two, and I would say maybe a third one would be castor oil. If you squirt some poke root, or you're using some gamma linolenic acid, combine it with just a tiny bit of castor oil as well, and add that to your palm, and then start massaging your breast, and you'll be surprised how much more efficacious it can become, because castor oil, what we now know is it carries things deeper into the tissue as compared to other oils. So you basically are getting a deeper penetration of the goodness from the gamma linolenic acid or from the poke roots. Yeah, so those are some simple, things that one can do. If you have, evening primrose at home, I mean, you can open the capsule even today and start it right away.
If you'd like a shortcut to better sleep, more energy, and a calmer, more stable mood, then you should make sure you're supplementing with magnesium daily. Let me tell you why. About 75% of people are magnesium deficient, says research. With the clients that I work with, 100% of them need magnesium. And this deficiency can lead to higher levels of anxiety, irritability, trouble sleeping, low energy, and it can even contribute to foot and leg cramps while you sleep. Now, you might be wondering, does magnesium really affect all these things? Well, the answer is yes. In fact, magnesium is involved in more than 300 chemical processes inside the body. So a lot of different things can start to go wrong if you're deficient. For example, glutathione uptake, which regulates your liver's ability to detoxify, requires magnesium. Now, the good news is that you can experience a number of positive health benefits just from getting enough magnesium, including better sleep, more energy, stronger bones, healthy blood pressure, less irritability, a calmer mood, reduced muscle cramping, and even fewer migraines. But to experience these health benefits, you have to get the right kinds of magnesium. There are actually 7 unique forms of magnesium, and you must get all of them at the right amounts if you want to experience its calming, health-enhancing effects. That's why I recommend Magnesium Breakthrough by Bioptimizers. It's the only organic, full-spectrum magnesium supplement that includes 7 unique forms of magnesium for stress relief and better sleep all in one bottle. Visit magbreakthrough.com/keto diet and order now. Oh, and in addition to the discount, you can get using the promo code Keto Diet 10. There are always amazing gifts with purchase. That's why I love shopping at Bioptimizers. Their Magnesium Breakthrough is my number one choice for magnesium. Again, you can go to magbreakthrough.com/keto diet. That's magbreakthrough.com/keto diet to get your Magnesium Breakthrough and find out this month's gift with purchase. That's amazing. That's so awesome. Such a great tip. And you had mentioned previously about like the prevention piece, and I'm sure the movement of lymph, like what you just talked about, is a huge piece of prevention, the liver support. Are there other pieces in regards to like preventing fibrocystic breasts?
Yeah, I think addressing estrogen dominance very proactively, for some women, it takes more work than for others. So let me give you an example. For instance, the reason why I do this work is because I am a notoriously bad estrogen metabolizer, right? I have all the genetic SNPs that make me, really struggle with estrogen metabolism, right? And it's not, and when I heard that, it suddenly a lot of things started making sense. First and foremost is the fact that I have family members, my aunts on both sides of the family dying from estrogenic cancers and as a predominant way of death or cause of death in both sides of my family. Ovarian cancers, uterine cancer, breast cancer, predominantly what runs in my family. We have a joke, which is kind of like funny. It's not funny at all, but it's more of like the men's side of the family joke that no women in our family has a uterus after 50. And I've just turned 50 and, literally 15 days ago. And I do plan to hold on to my uterus a lot longer, but it was because of history of fibroids and polyps, and developing tumors in the uterus that a lot of women in my family have lost the uteruses. And so for some women, it takes a lot more work to work on estrogen dominance. And I'll just say one more thing, Leanne, is that, when I got the diagnosis from getting the genetic testing done and got that interpreted, the family history was one thing, but the other thing it made sense was just create a lot more kindness and forgiveness to my own health, because I used to get really puzzled and then really angry with myself for like, oh my gosh, I go to Italy, right? Or I go to Spain or whatever, Portugal. And then the Mediterranean lifestyle, right? Wine, and there's a lot of gluten, and there's a lot more dairy than I would typically, and I also come with this coffee, right? These people live on coffee. And so I typically don't do any of those things when I'm in the US, when I'm back home. But, when you travel, you're like, oh, for goodness sake, like I'm just going to have some fun. And then I wouldn't even overdo it. Like I would not even do it like with the frequency that a typical, say, Italian woman would, right? But it's still like, it will still impact me so much. So if after 1 month of doing that, like I'll go to a month of hell. My period would be just from hell. My boobs would be, all swollen, right? I have horrendous mood swings. I can't sleep at night. Just really impacted by that stuff. So I was just like, why am I such a delicate flower? But then, now they understand that I have my the COMT gene is I've got a really slow COMT gene, and that thing isn't working very well. And so I need to do whatever I can to support it. So this is where supplementation, I think, plays a huge role, on top of a really clean diet. And let me just say that I'm going to talk about a couple of supplements that one can bring in to address estrogen dominance. However, if you're just doing supplements without doing a diet change, that stuff ain't going to work very well. So I just want to, clarify that because a lot of people are spending a lot of money on supplements and then they're still eating a highly inflammatory diet and they are kind of surprised that the supplements aren't working. So, a lot of women who have breast issues or period problems, right? And mood swings, etc., would be like, oh, DIM. And DIM, manufacturers of DIM have done a lot of marketing on labeling DIM as being the estrogen buster, right? So terrible name, but that's just how it's marketed. And it helps so typically what happens with DIM, a lot of women have some results initially, and then it stops working. Some women makes it worse right away. And for some women, it just doesn't do anything, right? So, and the reason why that happens is that you need to understand that estrogen gets metabolized in 3 phases in the body. The first phase is phase 1 in the liver. Then the second phase takes over, and there's different compounds that are going to be neutralizing these toxins. And then phase 3 is basically you pooping things out. So DIM plays a huge role in upregulating your first phase of the liver detoxification, where the estrogen gets broken down. But then it opens up the floodgates of phase 1 and then floods the liver with the metabolized estrogen, but that needs to be bound up, right? So phase 2 of the liver is like you need to marry off these substances with some sulfur or methane or whatever substances, right? Glucuronic acid, in order to evacuate them to phase 3, which is pooping. And this is when, if you have ever taken DIM and you started feeling worse or it stopped working for you, that's because you upregulated phase 1 liver detoxification. Okay, great. But then the phase 2 is left unsupported. And so in order to fix that, is what you want to do is you may want to add 2 more supplements to it. The first one is sulforaphane. So it's what's found in broccoli sprouts. If you're struggling with estrogen dominance, just eating broccoli sprouts on a regular basis is not good enough because you don't really know how much sulforaphane you're getting. There's a study that came out on that. Is like it can vary between almost nothing to being very decent. And so if you want to have a medicinal, clinical dose that's standardized and you know exactly what you're getting, then again, get it in a good quality supplement. And so this is where sulforaphane can help bind up some of the estrogens in phase 2. But there's another one, which is really fascinating. And let me just tell you a super quick story. I met a girlfriend and I went to do this botanical camp a couple of years ago. And I mean, she was on AIP diet. She had these 5 autoimmune diseases. She was really she had it under control. She was really, really on top of nutrition, and she was a clinical herbalist too, right? So she really knew her stuff. And about 7 to 10 days out of the month, her boobs would just be so engorged. She just couldn't, she couldn't function. And it was so, I mean, the way she would explain the pain, it was like, I've never heard of anybody explaining that pain. And so I said to her, so have you done this and this? And then she's like, yeah, I've worked with 3 different naturopaths and functional doctors. Nobody seems to have the answer. And I said to her, well, what about calcium deglucarate? And she's like, what? What is that? I don't have calcium problems. I'm like, no, it's not calcium. It's actually the glucuronic acid that you want that just happens to be attached to a calcium molecule. Anyway, the point is that in the phase 2 liver detoxification, we have this other pathway called the glucuronation pathway. And that's also one of the pathways that metabolizes estrogen. And so just adding calcium deglucarate can bind up that part of estrogens that maybe your liver is inefficient in doing that currently, but it also is the pathway that metabolizes a lot of medicine, prescription drugs, a lot of different toxins you're getting from non-organic foods. I have a colleague who is an emergency physician, and she uses that to detox people after anesthesia, after having a surgery. You do calcium deglucarate. You do not do it before surgery, please, because it's going to bind up stuff. But including the medications. And if you are doing any medications, actually, it's so powerful, this supplement, that you're going to take it away from your regular medications at least 4 hours. So, so this is just adding these supplements can really give you what I call complete estrogen detoxification. And that's going to be great support for a clean diet in really addressing the estrogen dominance element of breast health.
Yes, completely. And to kind of circle back to the beginning of our conversation about gut health, understanding that beta-glucuronidase, this whole thing that you're talking about, that enzyme that will recycle the estrogen, is increased when we have dysbiosis. So when the gut is unhealthy, that beta-glucuronidase is going to increase, which is going to recycle the estrogen. And it's this vicious loop. And I think that's one of the main reasons, probably, you can correct me if I'm wrong, you said gut health is so important, because if we have one of of those three dysbiotic patterns, whether it be inflammatory, insufficiency, or digestive dysfunction, we're going to likely have an increase in beta glucuronidase, which is then going to recycle our estrogen, and the loop just keeps going.
Absolutely. Yep.
And so let's just come up with like a scenario here that's probably quite common. Maybe women are like, oh, I'm really nervous about doing this breast massage. I don't know if I can do it, but okay, I'm going to do it. And they start feeling around and then they get concerned and then they maybe feel something. Where do they go? Like you mentioned thermography, you mentioned mammograms, you didn't mention ultrasound. Like what are we talking about in regards to imaging or diagnostic tools, or what do we do if we find something and we need help?
Yeah, so that's a really important question, right? That's the next step. So, I've done extensive research on thermography and spoken to some of the most renowned people in thermography in the country. And so what I've realized by talking to them is that thermography and mammograms are not one or the other. They are completely different technology, and it's also used at a different time of your issues, right? So let me just talk about thermography first. Thermography is amazing as a way to monitor your breast, and having that done once a year can be really helpful. Now, one note here, please do not get a thermography at a beauty center that also does things like Botoxes and injections and weight loss and whatever, because that you gotta have the right thermography equipment, which is high resolution. So there's a couple of pointers I want to just leave you with, so that when you call ahead of time to schedule an appointment, you want to ask them, do you use a high resolution camera? Do you cool the room and cool me before it gets done? And another third question would be, do you use color as well as black and white photography? And if they don't use black and white, which by the way, will show you estrogen dominant looks fascinating because you look like a leopard, literally, using the black and white technology, then that is like, those three things will just be a real good giveaway whether this person is really serious about it and is highly qualified to do it, or is it just, or it's not. Preferably also the technician should be trained by the American Thermography Association. So that's another, or be somewhat connected to them. So that's another thing to look out for. So that can make a huge difference because, a lot of times when we hear negative things about thermography, that's because the technology was just used, was inferior, and it's just not fair. Now, the thing with thermography is that, as you know, is a color change, right? Is the heat that gets brought into your breast, but you can also do, by the way, a thermography of your abdomen as well, right? And so that's the premise of it. The wonderful thing about thermography is that it is something that shows you the problem before it becomes a problem way ahead of time, right? And that's what I love about it, because it's like, oh, it's not red yet, but it's becoming orange. Like, why do I have these orange spots in my breast? And then the person who is the technician or the practitioner should be able to give you like 10 different points you can implement right away, and addressing estrogen dominance at a core root of issues, right, with breast, and lowering inflammation, talk to you about reducing coffee and reducing alcohol. That's a really, truly, great way of prevention and knowing what's happening before it becomes a problem. So, and I do recommend to do it on a yearly basis, especially after age 45. When it comes to sonograms, and ultrasound, I don't really have that much experience. That's, I think, a question for somebody who really specializes in that. I know that when I had lumps on it, they used an ultrasound and it was ruled out it was breast cancer. So that's as far as I know. But when it comes to mammograms, the thing is that there's a lot of negativity around it. And I totally get this. The part that drives me crazy is how mammograms are positioned in our society. That's a prevention thing, right? And the truth is that, for example, if your thermograph shows you an orange spot on your breast, right, that there is inflammation going on, mammogram ain't gonna pick that up. So mammogram can only help you when you already have a problem, and it's gonna tell you that it is a problem, right? And it's gonna tell you how much of a problem it is. So it's a completely different purpose, and I think it's a very personal choice and subject to somebody's set of beliefs, whether to do a mammogram, like when you find a lump, or not to do it. I personally, if I find a lump, or when I found one, I did an ultrasound, and then I decided to make a lot of changes in my life, and then give it a couple of months just to see whether that lump went away. before surrendering to mammogram. So I've never had a mammogram done in my life, but I have a thermogram done every year. And, and because the lump went away, so I never got a mammogram done. But, if you're dealing with, if you're someone who's got a history of breast cancer in a family, right? You've been having lumps coming and going, and you're really anxious about it, and you don't want to spend 2 months making all these changes that we talk about here just to see whether that improves, then this is just give yourself a peace of mind. That might be a really good solution. Because remember, also stress robs you of progesterone, and throwing the estrogen-progesterone ratio is one of the reasons why your breasts are going to suffer. So really that stress of the anxiety that, finding a lump brings on might actually be far worse. So do what feels right.
Yes, completely. I got my first thermography a couple of weeks ago, and I asked the practitioner ahead of time all those awesome questions, but then I realized she couldn't actually tell me anything about it. So she literally just gave me these pictures and I don't know what to do with them. So
no.
Yeah, seriously, nothing. So make sure you ask whether or not they can give you tasks or help you understand what they just gave you, because it means nothing to you unless you're trained to know.
You should have a full consult, like a full consult. The thermography takes about 30 minutes, 35 minutes. And then the rest of the time it should be a consult. It's typically a 2.5 to 3 hour thing, because you're going to cool the room, you're going to cool the body. That takes about 20 minutes for you to cool your body down and all that kind of stuff. So and did you get the black and white contrast as well?
I did not. No, I did not. So, you got to ask these questions, because then you're going to waste money like I did. And I asked if there would be a session and there wasn't. So make sure if you have a friend, maybe they've gone to a practitioner and they can tell you who they've seen, because it's a really invaluable tool. And a lot of my clients have used it with great success. So yeah, it's so great. Thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing all of your wisdom. Where can people find more from you?
So, on the product that I mentioned, Happy Sisters, is on Wellena, Wellena. That's our supplement product, our product page. And then I'm on social media, on Instagram as well as Facebook with Hormones, with as Hormones Balance handle.
Amazing. Magdalena, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Leanne, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I hope you enjoyed our time with Magdalena. You can find more from her by going to wellena.com. That's WELLENA.com. She also has a Facebook account, Hormones Balance. We'll see you back here next week for another episode. Bye. Thanks for listening. Join us next Tuesday for another episode of the Keto Diet Podcast. Looking for more resources? Go to healthfulpursuit.com for keto meal plans, weight loss programs, low-carb recipes, and oodles of free resources to get you going. The Keto Diet Podcast, including show notes and links, provides information in respect to healthy living, recipes, nutrition, and diet, and is intended for informational purposes only. The information provided is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, nor is it to be construed as such. We cannot guarantee that the information provided on the Keto Diet Podcast reflects the most up-to-date medical research. Information is provided without any representation or warranties of any kind. Please consult a qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding your health and nutrition program.